How hard did you push it? Till I black out? Yes. Numerous times, yes.
Hey, this is Chris.
This is Ashton.
We are the MuniciPals podcast. How you doing today?
Good. It's Monday. Didn't get to play golf this weekend because we were supposed to get a bunch of rain, which we really did not get. But yeah, don't mind a little bit of a break because recently I've been unable to hit a wedge on the green. So at least for right now, it's kind of good to take a little R&R until hopefully I can get a little bit more dialed in. What about you?
Yeah, with the recovering hammy, it seems like it's a reoccurring issue.
Wait, we haven't talked to this. What happened to the hammy?
Well, 6 months ago, tore the hammy. Decided to only take a short break from golf, which was not doctor recommended. So rehabbed it for about a month and then decided to get out there and go on a trip with you guys. Kind of just limped my way through that golf trip, which we'll probably get into at a later podcast. And then proceeded to continue to golf and not stretch and not do what physical therapist tells you to do. So
sick.
A couple weeks ago, pulled it again. So taking it easy. Haven't really been playing the last couple weeks, but probably try to get out there after the rain and stuff in California stops this week. So
yeah. Well, it just shows. I mean, we'll talk about this shortly, but I've actually not known Big Chris very long, but didn't know that story. We've spent a lot of time on the golf course together. Like he said, went on a golf trip, and well, I'm about to say learn something new about Chris's body, but that's, I know that's going to sound, but it's also true. Did not know that you tore your hamstring.
Yeah, not an enjoyable thing. I mean, when COVID hit, me and the wife retreated to Portland, and I proceeded to play 36 holes a day, 4 days a week. And when you get into your 30s and you don't stretch and you don't exercise at all besides play golf, your body deteriorates and will finally start breaking on you. And my hamstring was the part to break. So, yeah.
Well, I'm turning 29 this year, so I'm excited to figure out in a very short amount of time what part of my body is going to fall apart.
At least you're more limber than I have. I probably haven't stretched in 10 years, maybe 15. Who knows?
Who's to say?
Not limber. Haven't been able to touch my toes probably in 5. So, that's all real good news for the golf swing.
Yeah. Well, so this doesn't turn into a stretching podcast. Big Chris, what did you want to talk about tonight?
So tonight, since it's our maiden voyage into the MuniciPals podcast, thought we'd introduce ourselves to the listeners. So like we were just talking about, how did we meet? So it's kind of an interesting story. I don't know how many people are familiar with the Random Golf Club, but both of us were avid followers and listeners of the Random Golf Club and all their media. And so I myself was invited to this group that was created by now one of our really good buddies, Kanan, and Aaron Munda, to the chapter of Random Golf Club in San Francisco. And then from there, I started posting tee times to go out and play with people, and posted about trying to do a golf trip in the midst of a pandemic, and see what was to come of that. And we'll get further into that in other podcasts. And then I got the privilege to meet Ashton.
Yeah. Yes. Obviously similar story. I remember for me, so I moved from Atlanta. So I lived in San Francisco previously, spent about 1.5 years in Atlanta, and decided to move back to San Francisco well before COVID. But actually made the move, was supposed to be in March, and then ended up doing it in August of 2019, or no, 2020, because what is time? But I vividly remember I had followed Random Golf Club San Francisco, knowing I was moving. Saw them posting tee times and thought that was really cool, because at least one of the things for me that I'm sure we'll talk about is I love public golf. I love the accessibility factor. But one thing I always struggled with is I just played a lot of golf by myself. And to be clear, if I'm by myself, I'm fine with that. But I generally got paired with people who it's not about skill. It's much more about different vibe than I was hoping to have, or also too, like people who just don't really play much, or people who don't know the etiquette. Again, I learned from my dad. He told me when I was a kid, it does not matter how good you are. It's simply if you know the rules and play fast, no one will ever say a word. And just people who don't play much golf, play 3-4 times a year, they generally don't play fast and they don't know the etiquette. And that was kind of always a struggle
especially
for
during
me.
COVID.
No. And again, that's the hard part, is you're so excited to see new people on the course, but that can also be a bit of a double-edged sword, which we'll talk about. And there's certain rounds that we can talk about recently that we've had. But so I saw these posts, and I was like, I actually remember, I think I didn't know it was Canon at the time, but I responded and said, hey, I'm moving out at some point and like would love to take you up on this. And sure enough, I remember that they posted one of their first meetups at Glen Eagles Golf Course, which is a kind of a really fun 9-hole track in San Francisco. And I was in the middle of moving. So I remember I was in line at the Chick-fil-A in St. Louis, Missouri. And I DM'd, I didn't know it was Kanan, but Random Golf Club, and said, hey, I'd like to join. And he said, cool, love to have you. Excited you're moving. Send $35 to, I Venmo'd the general manager of Glen Eagles. And he's like, don't worry, it's legit. I was like, this definitely feels a little strange.
So just a little info on Glen Eagles. Glen Eagles is one of the most like down to earth public golf courses that you're ever going to come across the entire United States. It's not even just like in the city. It's like anywhere you go. And Thursdays out there after work cash games during the summer, it gets crazy. I've heard stories from people that work at Glen Eagles that, $250,000 to $500,000 can be lost on that golf course on a Thursday afternoon.
So what you're saying is we're going to get those people on the podcast for sure.
If I need to get connected with those people so we can have some conversations, because there's probably some interesting stories that are going to come out of that type of money being lost.
Yeah, no, we had a great hangout. But the funny thing is, Chris is probably one of the reasons I already appreciate him so much as a new friend, but already a good friend, is you're not going to meet someone who tries harder than Chris. Like if he's in, and there's I told my buddy earlier, he's got 2 speeds. He's either on or he's off, very similar to me. And so he posted in the group all the time, but we never played together because he also lives in Antioch, which is not far from San Francisco, but far enough that like we wouldn't intersect probably much without golf. And then, basically the first time I ever met the guy was a 4-day golf trip where he picked me up at my Airbnb in San Francisco it was either 4:45 or 5 a.m.
I left Antioch at 3:45 in the morning.
Yeah. So this guy, the only guy I've ever known is Big Chris, pulls up in a minivan, and I'm like, we're going to go spend 4 days of golf together. And I think we both feel like coming out of that, I was like, well, that's my homie right there. And I think since then we've played already a lot of golf. But again, that was only a couple months ago. So our friendship is new, but I think we both will talk about this as well. You really find a connection with someone on the golf course, and it really kind of fast tracks your friendship in a aggressive and kind of really fun way.
Definitely. I mean, that golf trip coming out of that, I mean, none of us knew each other, and we took kind of a big risk, going on a 4-day trip, staying in, hotel rooms with each other, and spending 4 to 5 hours in a confined space with people that, I've only golfed with one of the 4 people that we went with, Jack, prior to the trip. So, I didn't know anybody's personalities or how it was going to click. So it was really interesting. And I planned out a trip to where we really got to hit some iconic golf courses through Central California. And we had just such a blast. Again, we're going to get into that.
That'll be an entire pod. Yeah, that'll be an entire pod. Yeah. So that's how we met each other. And then kind of usually happens with me and Chris, we were having some other conversation, and I just remember he was like, should we start a golf podcast? And I was like, I've podcasted a little bit, and was like, yeah. And I'll kind of let Chris because again, he was the real driver behind the idea. But when he said municipal golf podcast, that's all I had to hear, because we'll talk about this shortly, but Muni golf and public golf has been kind of a part of my blood since I was a kid.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the lead into the next segment. I mean, what makes us love public golf? And to be honest, public golf is what I grew up on. So I grew up in, San Jose, California, and South Bay. Our local Muni close to my house was this little 9-holer called Prune Ridge Golf Course, and really cool little place between San Jose and Santa Clara. They had great youth programs free for kids on Saturdays. So my parents would drop me off every Saturday when I was 9 years old until I was 12 or 13, right when I started high school. And every Saturday I went through a whole, golf clinic and, hang out with the same kids every Saturday. And it was only $5 for us to play the course because they had a junior rate that was unbeatable anywhere in the Bay Area. Kids are much more fortunate now with the Youth on Course program. It didn't exist when I was a kid, but Youth on Course, you pay, a 65 or something like that membership, and you get to play thousands of courses across the United States for $5.
That's crazy.
Crazy deal for kids. We didn't have that. So we were really lucky to have Prune Ridge right around the corner from our house. And to this day, anytime I'm in the area, I'd love to pop in and just get an hour and a half, 9-hole, nine round in. And it's super easy. They're always friendly. The same, some of the same staff is still there.
Really?
And, that was over 20 years ago. When I started going there. So, public golf is really close to my heart. I played high school golf on the high school team. I was captain of our team starting freshman in high school, and I was on varsity from freshman to senior year. And all we did was play public courses around the Bay Area. And we were really lucky and fortunate enough to have one of the best public courses in the Bay Area as our home course, Coyote Creek Golf Club, which is out near Morgan Hill in between San Jose. And if anybody's been in the area, I mean, they used to hold the Champions Tour down there when they used to call it the Senior Tour. So I got to see like Lee Trevino and Jack and all those guys come through the track that I got to call my home course for high school. So, the public golf, and you as a person that's been living in the Bay Area for, a short time, have gotten out and experienced a lot of it.
Yeah.
I mean, we're very spoiled when it comes to public golf out here. And I'm sure you can talk a little bit about how it was growing up in Atlanta compared to the Bay Area.
Yeah, because I had a very different experience. So I guess to start off, I don't want to answer the next question that we're going to talk to too much, but so much of golf all to me ties back to my dad, who we'll kind of talk about our connection to golf and how we got into it in a second. But my dad, what I learned as a kid, there's a sort of irony that I'll talk about because, my dad, his growing up, he actually was a member of a private club through his parents, and golf was really his refuge because, let's just say that my grandmother and grandfather were not very happily married. The home situation wasn't always ideal, and the golf course was my dad's escape. So they were lucky enough to be a member of a private club. It's called Druid Hills. It's still there. I've never played it, but from what I've heard, it's a very kind of nice in-town course in Atlanta. But it was the refuge for my dad. But as he got older and he wasn't a member anywhere, he really kind of made friends with a bunch of guys who, in my mind, this is sort of the seed of Random Golf Club in its own way. My dad called it hobo golf. The idea of like, we just make a tee time and go pay and play. It's not a matter of who we know. It's not a matter of connections. It's not a matter of, you pay your own greens fees and you have $20 and $1 bills in your pocket. You play a little bit and drink beer and you go home. And that's kind of what my dad taught me when I was a kid, because he told me, because I definitely, once I started to get a little bit of the golf itch, I wanted more, like he started to teach me about, I think we all know about greens, right? Once he started to teach me about, he shows me good greens. We're like, well, well, that course, that private course I played with my friends. It's like, yeah, but that's not what you're going to play. Because my dad's rule was there was a course around the corner called North Fulton. I called it Chastain because Chastain Park is this kind of park in the middle of Atlanta. But the course is called North Fulton. My dad's deal was he always told me, he's like, I'm never going to buy you new clubs, but like you'll always have clubs that fit you. There'll always be like clubs that like, when I say he approves of, I didn't mean he's some arbiter, but like he's not going to put me in bad stuff. Right. But I remember my first ever 7, it was Cleveland TA7 irons, my first ever. So I'm a lefty also. So it's a little bit harder for me. But Cleveland TA7 irons were barely touched. We got them at Played Against Sports, which I don't know if that's out here, but it's like a sports basement.
Yep. We got them out here.
Yeah, and he's like, cool, that you're gonna play those. And North Fulton, I think as a kid it was 300 and I might get the number a little wrong, but I think it was $345 for a 12-month, all you can play as a kid. So you flash the card, like go as many times as you want over and over and over again. Very small putting green. You could chip some, but like it wasn't worth it. It was also very tilted, so it wasn't very helpful. All the putts kind of went to the same spot. No driving range. Also centered all the way around by cars, ironically. So, there's holes where you could add, like, I definitely like hit some windshields as a kid. But my dad's rules, like, again, he was very generous, being like, you can play North Fulton and public golf as much as you want. I'll always make sure you have clubs, but his whole thing was really teaching me at an early age that, in fact, if you show up on the first tee as a kid with all of the best equipment, or you show up and you only want to play private clubs, he actually said to me, he said, that's a lot of things. That's not golf. And that always stuck with me. So again, I grew up. I mean, I think for me, I played a lot of baseball when I was a kid. My dad's philosophy, it's funny how I'm blending these two topics together, but I can't not in my situation. But he told me as a kid that, and this is his suggestion for when we have kids, Chris, he said, the two things are you have to always have clubs that fit your kid so that if they ask to go with you, they have like a set that works for them. So my dad would always invite me when he goes to the range. I would say no 80% of the time, 90% of the time. But I remember vividly when I got to high school, I remember my first day of football practice, the guy who was running back was 6'3", and had a full beard. And I found out that he played my position at baseball. And I literally got in the car and I said, I'm going to play golf. That's it. Like, and sure enough, his name's Cash Manzelli. He was an All-American in baseball and basketball at the Naval Academy. So you guys can't see me because it's a podcast, but I'm a curly-headed normal dude. Like
he made the right choice.
Yeah. I mean, he had like full chest hair when we were like in 9th grade. So that's when I kind of made the switch. But I remember vividly, though, I was playing fall baseball when I was 13 years old. I'd play a fall baseball game, and then I would tell my dad, because the baseball field was right next to the golf course, I would go play 9 holes with my dad in my baseball uniform. And that is when I knew that I wanted to be a golfer.
Yeah, I mean, that's once you're hooked and you're done playing baseball and you want to go straight to the golf course. I mean, you've got the bug for sure. I mean, like baseball sock pants rolled up so you can see my socks, mud on them, hitting my driver off the first tee. See, that's the dream.
Yeah.
See, so that leads, for me, leading into that. The person that got me into golf was same thing. It was definitely my dad. But the person that kept me playing golf was my grandmother. So my dad's mother, who I call Mamu. So Mamu, every Sunday, we'd rotate between 3 different courses in the area. We had Sunken Gardens. We had Blackberry Farms.
Wow.
Sunken Garden.
Whoa, look at these course names.
Oh,
Blackberry
yeah.
Gardens? Hell yeah.
So Blackberry Farms. So Blackberry Farms was this weird 9-hole track. You'd look at it and it looks like a park that somebody just built greens in. So they're like, they just place markers where they decide the tee boxes are in somewhere in the fairway. So there was no real tee boxes. Some of the holes did have them, but they just had some makeshift circular greens out there. During the summer, they had like a big pool that they opened up for the kids to come out. So whenever we were in like day camps, they always brought us to Blackberry Farms.
Yeah. That kind of sounds like the OG sheep ranch where it's like we built 13 greens and you can kind of do whatever you want. I'm sure conditions weren't quite the same, but you know what I'm saying.
Very similar. I mean, the greens were in pretty good shape, for what it was. So it was great when I was a kid, and it was an easy walk for my grandma. And then we would go to Sunken Gardens, which was a great track out in Sunnyvale, just like an Executive 9, really short.
I love that name. Sounds like a good like brewery or something.
And you know what? It is sunken too. So it's like in this like sunken gully, like surrounded by these like apartment complexes. It's really, really funky, but like it's kind of serene too and quiet. It's very interesting course. We'll have to like go out and play all 3 of these courses I grew up on in like one day, since they're like short 9-holers.
That'd be awesome.
And then Prune Ridge, which I mentioned earlier. So we'd rotate between those every Sunday. And then she'd come over to my parents' house and have dinner as a family. So
that sounds what special memories? I bet that was incredible.
Yeah, it was awesome. So pretty much from the ages of, 10 up to like mid-teens, I did that with my grandma almost every Sunday. And then, I never really had any friends growing up that played golf. So, golf was always a family-oriented outing. Or I played by myself. And I played by myself a lot. But when I did go out with my dad, it was always a special treat. My dad's one of the worst golfers you'd ever meet in your life.
Really? I wouldn't expect that either.
He's horrible. Like, absolutely fucking horrible. It's rough.
The real question is, would he agree?
Oh, yeah. And he'd be the first person to tell you how bad he is and how he doesn't care either. He gives no shits that he is a world-class awful golfer. But what irritates me is he has a hole-in-one and I don't. And it's not even comparable, the difference in our abilities of playing. So very frustrating in that aspect.
Yeah.
But my dad, when we did go out, it was always super competitive between me and my brother. So my brother started playing golf because I started playing golf.
Remember you said that. You said all he cares about is beating you.
So that was our whole lives growing up, for the most part, is whenever we played golf, all we cared about was beating the other person. So, that was my drive for the longest time, was to be better, to have the ability better than my brother. I could care less how good of a golfer I got, as long as it was good enough to beat my brother. And, my brother is a very athletic person. So, he's definitely, can hit the ball long. He always hit it longer than me. So I always found ways to beat around him. And so I always worked heavily on my approach shots, my short game, and my putting. And I mean, you've golfed with me. That's still probably my strong suit now. I'm very Jordan Spieth-esque when it comes to off the tee. I step up to that.
Well, I think you hit it on the planet a lot more than he does. You're not long, but
no.
You like what a shotgun start called Jordan Spieth, like the duct tape boy. Like, you're not a duct tape boy.
No, but there's plenty of times I step up to the tee box and I go, well, we'll see what happens here. So
well, I will say I've been told the 2 things I had been told about Chris from afar was he hits a big cut off the tee and he's like really good with his short game. And on our golf trip, I joked he was like a generational straight driver of the golf ball. Everything looked pulled, but I was just like, clearly he just was not, he was hitting, the club face wasn't quite open enough. So he's hitting these really great drives that were just, along the left side of the fairway. And I was like, man, Big Chris, just a generationally straight driver of the golf ball. And he was like, dude, I've never hit this many, like, air quotes, straight drives ever in my life.
It was miraculous to be able to play that many rounds in a row and not have a 20-yard left to right. So yeah, it comes and goes, but as my job being a club fitter and club builder, I am constantly tinkering, so that doesn't help at all when you have a wide array of, you know, drivers and shafts that you can constantly switch out and play with, and equipment swap. So that doesn't help my game.
This will be another podcast, but I'll go ahead and tell you is to call Chris to call him a tinkerer is like the understatement of the century. Like there's a time we played this course, Castle Oaks, last like in November, and I just pull up and I look and not only like is the actual golf bag different, I looked in there and I go, and he just goes, yep, everything's different. Played it in the week before. I mean, I don't know. So it's just like, and now he's using this ping putter. It's like 4 rounds in a row. And it's like the most jarring thing where it's like 4 rounds in a row with the same putter. Like it feels weird because I'm the opposite. Like once I find stuff I like he can attest to my best club is a hybrid I bought in 2008. Like I am not a tinker. I like to get my stuff and stick with it.
Technology, people. High board technology.
Yeah. Cleveland, throw us that sponsor and start making those clubs again. Like get the people what they want.
So the high board never left. It's still around. They're just now calling it the HB Launcher, so they got a little fancy with the name. But
why are golf marketing companies? Why are they so bad? Like Rad Speed, like stop. That's horrible.
Yeah,
HB Launcher.
The names coming out right now, they're either like number alphabetical weird like long names, or they're just like let's mash like distance and forgiveness and all these weird names and words together and just create a number. Like, yeah, we don't need another epic whatever with Callaway, but they're gonna keep putting it out. So well, that's another podcast. We won't get into that.
Okay, so are you done with your story about your connection to golf? Anything else you want to share?
Meeting the people that I've met on the golf course has always led to more opportunities as well. You know, one great thing I've always fell in love with public golf, and it's my favorite thing about public golf, is actually going out as a single, playing with random strangers, and coming across 1 or 2 people that you do connect with. There's going to be a lot of foursomes that you play with, and I'm sure you've experienced it, that you just come off like, oh man, I want to finish this 18 holes and get the hell out of here. But then there's some 18 holes where you're like exchanging numbers and getting excited to play with that person again. And I've experienced that multiple times.
Totally.
Especially during, you know, with our connection with RGC, and then on top of it, you know, in the COVID times, I've really met some great people across all the different rounds that I've played. You know, with me going out to Sacramento when they closed all our courses here in the Bay Area, I came across playing, you know, with an ex, you know, Sacramento Kings basketball player that I ended up playing a few cash games with, and I still you know, stay connected with today. So the people you come across on public golf, it doesn't matter what you do for a living. It really matters, you know, your love for the game and your love for, you know, meeting new people and growing, you know, your feelings towards why you're out there. And, you know, it's just a hard thing to express why public golf is such an incredible feeling. And, but it's my favorite thing in the whole world. I'm obsessed and I can't get over it.
Yeah. I mean, totally. Because I think the feeling of, I mean, I know obviously it's their business model, right? But also I think the fact that you are just, that no matter who you are, you feel included. I mean, I know for me, one of the things that now, as I've gotten older, moving back to Atlanta before moving back here, and also certain things like no laying up, Neil and Tron, who actually went to my high school, it's kind of weird, they talked about recently is with kind of fresh eyes, especially coming to the Bay Area, public golf in Atlanta is horrible. And I think what's really interesting is most people, I get why, think like Atlanta, Georgia, Augusta, golf, like I get the natural connection. but Atlanta is not a good place for public golf. But it's, definitely a haven for private golf. I mean, for example, Neil and Tron, they grew up at Dunwoody Country Club, which I played a ton as when I was in high school, because that was one of the courses. But going back to your example, Chris, like my high school golf experience, I don't think we played a Lanier Country Club, which sounds private but is public. But I would say that at least 80% of the golf I played on my high school team was all private clubs who let us play, or we had a member on the team or a kid on the team whose parent was a member. It's like Cherokee Golf Club in Atlanta, private. Dunwoody Country Club, private. Atlanta Athletic Club, private. Country Club of the South, private. Rivermont, private. And then we played Lanier. So Lanier was most courses I played, I knew that the only way I was going to play it was through high school golf, which is just kind of weird. I mean, it doesn't really matter at this point, but that was how I grew up. And then it's like, people are like, where do you play? And I'm like, North Fulton, which is kind of this, little scruffy, like not great greens, like very like Bermuda, and like, especially because it's so hot in Georgia, this is kind of some courses were doing Champions Bermuda, but it was really just Bermuda because they could leave it long in the summertime and it wouldn't die. It was kind of like putting on carpet, but like that wasn't the point. Like we were out there just like, that's where, my dad said you just need to play and play again and suck and suck again until one day hit a pure 7-iron. It's like, okay. And then you kind of feel yourself becoming a golfer. But it was just very different growing up in Atlanta. And that's one of the things I feel about the Bay is like, there's definitely moments where I get not frustrated. Like, for example, this weekend, I'm going up to, I think it's Windsor. Windsor Golf Club. Yeah. Santa Rosa. Like, I'm excited, but also like, do I love the fact that I'm going to drive, 2.5 hours round trip to play golf? Like, no. But I think the fact that like within a 3-hour radius, you can attest, I mean, you actually probably get a number. Within like a 3-hour radius of San Francisco, it feels like there's a limitless number of golf courses that I can play. Where in Atlanta, that's just not a reality. Like my buddy Nick, who fell in love, we should actually get him on here too, because he is one of my best friends for a while. Had never played golf before, and then in COVID just heard me be like, golf is saving me, and bought a set of Strata clubs, for like $250, and the dude is now like, I mean, equally as sick as we are. Like literally just now, like we talk every Monday night. He was in bed next to his girlfriend, listening to like the Butt Club podcast. He fell asleep. Like has been to Sweetens Cove twice. Like is all in on kind of this movement. Nick's probably the best ambassador for what we're talking about. But he keeps playing the same course that we played during COVID. It's just outside of Atlanta. It's $40 to walk. Greens are in pretty good shape. But like at first he was like, I want to try their courses. And then he tried other courses and was like, these totally suck. So now he just plays, it's called River Pines. He plays River Pines every week, because that's kind of sucks though to live in Atlanta. It's like, as far as like a golf course, he feels like he has one option, and that is not how we feel. Again, we've had bad experiences. I have to drive a little bit, but we do not have one golf course to play. And I feel very lucky for that.
No, yeah. I mean, the vast array of types of courses that we get to play, and the amount of, different architects that we get to experience on a regular basis, just within, like you said, 3-hour, drive in either direction. It's just absolutely incredible. I mean, as everybody knows, the good Dr. Alistair McKenzie blessed us with some of the, best courses, and, some that are public that we get to play, whenever we want. Yeah, some of them are a little expensive. Paso Tiempo, one of the best courses in the world.
That's my number one course I want to play.
You're pushing $300 to play there, but
yeah,
it's an experience that you're only going to experience, if you're at Augusta, or if you're, in Australia experiencing some of his tracks over there. It's just, I was lucky enough in high school that we had a high school fundraising tournament every year. So I got to play it 4 times while I was in high school. That was before the restoration, so I haven't seen it since the restoration happened. But I mean, I was blessed to be able to go out there and play, a shotgun scramble every year for a fundraiser. So, and then of course we've got Monterey right down the road. And I mean, it's just endless, the amount of options that we have. We've got the, beautiful Carica that's just getting finished, that every RGCSF guy has just been obsessed with since the South Course opened.
I think within 2 months of living here, I think I played Carica 6 times.
Yeah, and I mean,
the greens are unbelievable.
Since it's opened, I've played there 3 or 4 times, and you can't even score tee time anymore there, especially with COVID. So, we've even found a loophole where you show up at, right when they open, and you put yourself on the waiting list and hope that
old course style
will show up. Yeah, old course style. So, it's just one of the best kept courses in the area. It's very consistent every time you go out. I know you're excited. I'm excited. Everyone in the Bay Area is excited.
It feels like a treat.
It really is. And it having 2 world-class 18s built by Robert Trent Jones Jr. It's definitely a treat, and if you've never been to the little island of Alameda, it's such a cool little pocket right outside of Oakland. That's just, a little gem of a town. So if you ever get a chance, I mean, that's a golden place to go to.
Yeah.
But the experiences I've had between, here and even Sacramento, probably one of the most underrated areas in California for golf. Everybody talks about Southern California and the Bay Area, but I mean, with some of the courses that you experience in Sacramento, and again, we'll have another podcast where we get into the regions that we've lived in and, what makes those regions great about their public golf scene. I've been very spoiled, and I spent a lot of time up in Portland as well, living there. And that's where I met my wife. So the courses that I was able to experience in Oregon too. I mean, in my opinion, between Oregon and Michigan, those might be the 2 most hidden gem states for public golf. So, and again, we'll get into those in another further podcast, but for this first podcast, kind of just wanted to introduce ourselves to the listeners and get a little warm introduction and
talk hamstrings, talk stretching,
which I'm going to have to do very frequently because we have another golf trip coming up. Second SoCal trip, a little Palm Springs action, some Rams Hill. So, another podcast, we'll get into that as well and introduce a couple of the people that are going to join us on that trip. So,
and also too, I mean, it's like we're doing scheduling live, which is never fun to listen to, but I can bring my microphone. We could even do a couple pods with or even maybe like a recap pod at the end, or we can definitely find a way to talk more about that. Cause one of the things to brag on Chris, I'm sort of, even though I've played golf my whole life, I'm very new to golf trips. Like I think my first ever real golf trip was last summer. Me and my buddy Nick, who I mentioned, a couple of our friends, we went to Alabama for the Robert Trent Jones Trail, which I cannot give enough of a ringing endorsement. It was $100 with a cart to play as much golf as you want. And the judge is, I'm sure you've heard about it, it's one of the hardest golf courses I'd ever played. I know that my golf swing was not on the first day we played. I lost 9 golf balls on the first 9 holes. At the time, I was a 4.2 handicap, so 1 + 1 = 2. Maybe also means I wasn't a 4.2 handicap, but who's to say? But yeah, so I'm kind of new to golf trips. But Chris has been such a great Sherpa to help us get through like different courses, different designs, different areas. And I think the big thing, which probably doesn't in public golf balls to talk about, is, I mean, I do find like it's got to be affordable, man. Like I like, especially if we're going to do these a couple times a year, if we're doing this a couple times a year, like it's super exciting, the idea of some of these golf trips. But even like when I've heard, Solly no laying up guys or the Chasing Scratch guys talk about like their Ireland trip, they're like, you're talking $4 or $5 grand before airfare. Like I can probably do that maybe a couple times in my life, but that's got to be like a lot of budgeting. Like if we're going to do a golf trip like 6 weeks out, it's got to be at a number where it's like, okay, I can like save a little here, move a little here. I can't be dropping commas on trips. And I think that's where we could even do a podcast talking about how you think about golf and how you keep it cheap. But that's sort of, again, like we're doing these at these like great golf courses, but I know one of our favorite courses, like the fact like Rustic Canyon's like $55, that's a game changer, super game changer. And again, sort of the embodiment of what public golf should be, where conditions are fantastic, a full tee sheet, pace of play is good, and it's affordable. Like if we just have those things, if we can get as much of that as possible into the world, and people also do their part and play fast and are respectful, that's it, man. And we got a long way to go, but I think that's kind of, there are certain beacons of hope like Rustic Canyon that I think give us hope for what icons, what we want golf to be, that I think people should try to embody as much as they can. Right.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why we love this. And that's actually what fuels me to keep wanting to play different courses and experience all these things, because people talk about, these grand architectural, masterpieces that are built, and they're all private or resort style and, hard and difficult and expensive for people to play. But then you've got places like Rustic Canyon, where was built by a world-renowned architect. Gil Hanse goes to Rustic Canyon to build it, and there was a course that was damaged and ruined by floods only 20, 25 miles, 30 miles away, called Soul Park. And so when he was building Rustic Canyon, he goes, "Hey, what's going on with Soul Park?" And he kept asking, the people that ran the golf course about it. And he ended up making multiple trips out there and then actually redesigning Soul Park as well while he was in the area. And for those two courses to be designed by somebody like Gil Hanse, and we can go down there on a Thursday or Friday and under $90 play 36 holes.
Magic.
I mean, it's crazy. And those are the kind of gems that I look for when I play in these golf trips. And even locally for us, like you were just talking about earlier in the pod, where we went out and played Castle Oaks. I mean, this course is in the middle of nowhere. It is in this little town called Ione, California. You drive past
like literal
Stockton.
Main Street, literally Main Street.
In Main Street, Ione, California. There's this old hotel that looks like a castle that you can see from the golf course, thus the name Castle Oaks. And it's just this crazy cool, quirky design, 18th hole split fairway to like this island fairway that you can cut like a good 180 yards off your shot if you decide to take the risk.
I will say I played terribly that day. I hit driver gap wedge. Yeah, because I took the most aggressive line and hit a perfect drive.
I think all four of us playing that day took that aggressive line. We all were very lucky that we all were able to make the little island fairway. And I helped that it was the only one that hit the green from there.
It was sopping wet. That really helped, because my ball in the summertime would have gone in the water for sure.
But I mean, that course we played on a Sunday at 10:30 in the 10:30.
We had 27 in too.
Yeah, and we played 27, and they gave us the second, if we could have got 18 in, they would have allowed us to, but it got too
I think
dark.
They comped our carts. That's what it was.
They comped our carts and only charged just $18 to play the second 18.
Yeah.
And the first 18 was only like $49. So, the amount of golf in America, and especially if you don't mind searching for it, it's there.
But that's where I give you credit, because you dig more than anybody I've ever met.
I mean, it's almost like a disease. I mean, I wake up wanting to play other new adventurous golf courses. I don't care about the drive. I have list after list after list of tracks that I've done research and found and heard on other podcasts, and have read on one of my favorite blogs, The Fried Egg, and all these different lists, and just compiled my own to where I probably have over 1,000 courses written down that are all public, that are all under $100 to play.
Like, if you guys want to know what it is to be Big Chris's friend, you're probably going to get a text. It's a slightly weird hour. One word is definitely going to be misspelled. Well, it's going to be 2 messages. The first is going to have some kind of misspelling. The second is going to be clarifying, but it's going to be like something like, check out this 6 misspelled track with like 5 exclamation marks. Sorry, like misspell. And then you click the link and you're like, whoa, where is that? And then we go play it. And like, that's the fun part, where it's like, because I'm more of the opposite. I love to do that, but I'm more of living in San Francisco. It's like, I'll just go play the Presidio every week. It's like an 8-minute drive from my house. It's a fun course and it's affordable, which I can still do. But it's like when Chris is like, we got to drive to, like, because I remember you said Castle Oaks, and I was like, I think Marcus, our friend Marcus, we were like, it's like more than 2 hours. And eventually Chris kept talking. We're like, you know what, man, we'll spend 5. If you are going to ride this hard for a golf course, we'll spend 5 hours in the car today to go play. And it was worth it. I mean, I don't think it was as good, like, because also there was like superintendent issues, and like, it wasn't your fault.
The conditions weren't great. Again, they were having over 200 people, a day playing it for the last 6-7 months. I mean, which that course is averaging usually between 80 and 120 people at the best playing.
And they had a new super, right, Chris?
They had a new super. So they were in a lot of transitions. I always want to give a little bit of respect to the course if they're, going through transitions or,
And it was clear they were trying. Like, it was one of those places like you could understand. Like, there's some places where it's like, the conditioning is like, y'all aren't paying attention, or y'all are not putting money in the right places. You could tell the intention was right. Like, my guess is post-COVID, when natural traffic dies down, new management gets in there. Like, I could definitely see. I mean, I think the biggest thing was, even though like greens weren't perfect, really fun, interesting course for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it's just the design of it is just, incredible. It's one of my favorite tracks in the area. And again, we'll have other pods where we get into, our favorite tracks and little pockets of, areas that we think are the ones that probably have the best public golf that we've experienced ourselves. But, I think that's going to do it for tonight. I think we can wrap it up.
It's a good first conversation. Yeah.
So, next podcast, I think we'll go into more about our next trip and the public golf courses that we're most excited to play next, in the pockets that we live in now, and what makes the public golf so good in our own areas.
Sounds good. Well, we're excited to do this, and thank y'all for listening.
Yes, sir.